The morning started beautifully enough. The venue smelled like roses and vanilla frosting. The string quartet rehearsed quietly in the corner, and my best friend Amy was standing beside me, adjusting my veil with trembling hands. "You're glowing," she said, smiling at me through the mirror. I smiled back, trying not to cry. I'd spent months planning this day. The soft blush palette, the fairy lights, the 3-tier white chocolate cake I'd chosen with my mother. Everything was perfect, almost cinematic. Almost. Somewhere inside, a whisper of anxiety coiled in my chest. I'd told Daniel 1,000 times, no cake smashing. I hated the idea. I'd seen the videos online where brides ended up humiliated, mascara streaked down their faces while everyone laughed. I told him it wasn't funny. It wasn't us. He'd laughed, kissed my forehead, and said, "Of course not." I promised, so I believed him. I believed both of them. Amy had helped me pick out that cake. She'd laughed with me about how childish those cake smash couples looked. "Ugh, I could never do that to you," she'd said. "You deserve to feel beautiful on your big day." Looking back, I should have heard the hollowness in her tone. The ceremony itself went smoothly. My father walked me down the aisle, his hand shaking slightly on mine. When he lifted my veil, there was pride in his eyes. The kind of quiet, restrained pride only fathers have when they realize their little girl is grown. Daniel looked nervous, but sweet. His brown hair was slightly out of place, like he'd been running his fingers through it, but I didn't mind. It was him, the man I'd chosen, the man I thought would keep my heart safe. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," I felt like the world stopped for a second. Everything blurred, the applause, the flashes of cameras, the smell of flowers. It was supposed to be perfect, and for a few minutes it was. Until the reception. People underestimate how small betrayals feel right before they explode. They start like static in the air, harmless, easy to ignore, until they spark. The speeches were funny. My dad told the story about how Daniel got lost trying to find our first date spot. Amy told one about how I once made Daniel dress as a vampire for Halloween and he forgot his fake teeth. Everyone laughed. Then came the cake. The lights softened, music faded. Our photographer called us to the center of the room. I remember clutching Daniel's arm and whispering, "Please don't." He smiled. That teasing, boyish grin that used to melt me. "Relax," I remember. The crowd gathered close. Cameras ready. I picked up my fork. And then, splat. The world went white. Sweet, sticky frosting filled my nose, my mouth, my eyes. My veil tore slightly as I stumbled backward. Laughter erupted, echoing through the hall like a wave. My mother's voice cut through it. Sharp, furious. But all I could hear was Daniel laughing. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Somewhere in the blur, I saw Amy's face. Not shocked, not horrified, but amused. She was hiding a smirk behind her hand. She looked proud, almost triumphant. And that's when something inside me cracked. Later, I sat alone in the hotel bathroom, still wearing my ruined wedding dress, frosting crusted in my hair. I didn't cry at first. I just stared at my reflection until it didn't look like me anymore. When Daniel knocked, I didn't answer. When Amy tried to come in, I told her to leave. She said softly through the door, "Hey, it was just a joke. You know him." Just a joke. Those 3 words followed me everywhere. Through the awkward morning after, through the empty honeymoon suite, through the silent car ride home. My parents didn't even try to hide their disappointment. My mother said, that wasn't a joke. That was cruelty dressed as humor. She was right. I confronted Daniel a week later in our new apartment. I wanted to understand. "Why did you do it?" I asked. He looked confused, defensive. "Amy said you'd like it. She told me you'd laugh, that it'd make things lighthearted." I felt the air leave my body. "Amy told you that?" "Yeah," he said, as if that excused it. "I thought you two were on the same page." Amy. My best friend since freshman year. The girl who'd held my hair back when I got food poisoning, who'd helped me pick my dress, who'd stood next to me while I said my vows. I realized then that she wasn't my best friend. She was my audience. Watching, waiting, maybe even hoping I'd fall. The annulment was quick. The silence afterward wasn't. For months, I stayed at my parents' house, sleeping in my old room with its floral wallpaper and fairy light curtains. My mother would knock softly every morning, offering tea. My father barely spoke about it, but I could tell he was angry, the kind of cold, simmering anger only fathers have when they realize someone broke their daughter's heart. "Don't let this stop you from believing in happy endings," Mom said one night, stroking my hair like she used to when I was a child. I nodded, but inside, I felt hollow. Because happy endings weren't real. They were just endings that came before you found out the truth. I laughed, a dry, brittle sound that didn't feel like mine. She had the nerve to send it to me. After everything. For a while I just sat there, the envelope open on my kitchen table. Then curiosity began to claw at me. Why would she want me there? Surely she knew how it would look. I called my old friend Jen, who still lived back home. "Why the hell would Amy invite me to her wedding?" I asked. Jen hesitated. "You really haven't heard, huh? Amy's been getting roasted around town ever since she started dating Daniel. Your parents hate her, and pretty much the whole social circle turned on her. Everyone knows she ruined your wedding, so she's hoping if you show up, people will think you've forgiven her. It'll make her look like the bigger person." I sat in silence. Then I smiled. "Oh," I said. "I see." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, watching the blades spin round and round. My mind replayed everything. The laughter, the frosting, Amy's smug expression. And then Daniel's words echoing. "Amy said you'd like it." I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt focused. Maybe I'd go. Maybe I'd give her exactly what she wanted. The picture of forgiveness, the image of peace. Let her think I'd moved on. People forget that sometimes forgiveness looks a lot like patience. And I've always been very patient. I told myself I was going for closure. That's what people do when they've moved on, right? They face the ghosts that haunt them and prove they're no longer afraid. But as the train rolled past miles of open fields and the skyline of my old hometown came into view, I realized something deeper was stirring. Not fear, not grief, but anticipation. It had been over 2 years since I left this place behind. And still, every streetlight and billboard carried whispers of what happened. The cake bride, the video that went viral, the humiliation that spread faster than fire in dry grass. And at the center of it all, Amy and Daniel. The thought made my hands tighten around the wedding invitation in my purse. Cream cardstock, gold lettering, perfect calligraphy. Her style, of course. Elegant, performative, expensive. It even smelled faintly of vanilla. Just like the frosting. When I arrived, my mother was waiting at the station. She hugged me tightly but pulled back to study my face. "You sure about this, sweetheart?" I smiled. "I just want to show her I've moved on." Mom raised an eyebrow. She'd known me long enough to hear the lie under my breath. But she didn't push. "All right. Dinner tonight?" "Of course," I said. We drove home mostly in silence. The town looked smaller now, as if time had shrunk it. Every building had a story attached. The coffee shop where Amy and I used to study. The florist who'd done my wedding bouquet. The park bench where Daniel first told me he loved me. I should have felt nostalgic. Instead, I felt detached, like I was watching someone else's life through glass. At dinner, Dad was his usual quiet self, asking polite questions about my job and the city. Mom eventually brought up the obvious. "So, are you planning to see them before the wedding?" I paused, cutting into my steak. Amy texted me earlier. She wants to meet for lunch tomorrow. Mom's fork stopped midair. "You're actually going?" I smiled faintly. Of course. It would be rude not to. The next day I arrived early at the restaurant, a cozy bistro near downtown. The kind of place Amy loved. Polished wood tables, lavender napkins, and sunlight streaming through the windows just right for Instagram photos. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Amy looked thinner, sharper. Her smile was practiced, like it had been rehearsed in the mirror. She wore a white sundress, the kind of thing brides-to-be wear when they want everyone to notice the ring. "Wow," she said, hugging me quickly. "You look amazing." "You too," I lied. We ordered coffee. The silence between us stretched, awkward but charged. "So," she began, stirring her drink. "I was really surprised you RSVP'd. Why?" "Well, I didn't think you'd want to see us. After, She trailed off, her expression faltering for just a second. "But I'm glad you're coming. It means a lot." I tilted my head. "Of course. We all make mistakes. Besides, it's been years." Amy smiled, visibly relieved. "Exactly. It's all in the past. I just want everyone to be happy again." Her words sounded like something she'd practiced, maybe even said to herself in the mirror a dozen times. I watched her closely. Her eyes flicked away every time mine met hers. She laughed too quickly, talked too fast. She was nervous, and that told me something important. She needed me there. By the time the check came, she'd relaxed enough to slip back into her old rhythm, gossiping about mutual friends, showing me photos of the venue, bragging about Daniel's promotion. It was all so familiar, so rehearsed. She wanted me to believe her life had turned out perfectly. But behind the glossy words, I saw the cracks. The defensiveness when she mentioned Daniel's family, the way her fingers fidgeted with the engagement ring, the brief flash of discomfort when I mentioned I'd moved on, that I was dating someone new, control. That's what Amy needed. She'd lost control of the narrative after my wedding, the humiliation, the whispers, the judgment. Now she wanted to rewrite history, and I was going to let her. That evening, my phone rang in my hotel room. When I saw Daniel's name on the screen, I almost laughed. For a second, I considered not answering, but curiosity won. "Hello?" There was a pause, then his voice, tentative and low. "Hey, it's Daniel?" "Hi," I said, keeping my tone even. "I heard you're in town," he said. "Amy mentioned you were coming to the wedding. I wanted to apologize for everything. Apologies lose their meaning when they come years too late, but I stayed quiet." "I was stupid," he continued. "I thought it'd be funny, but it wasn't. You didn't deserve that." I let the silence stretch before answering. "No, I didn't," he sighed. "You've probably moved on, huh?" "I have," I said softly. "It took a while," he chuckled awkwardly. "Yeah, me too. Well, trying to. Wedding stress, I smiled to myself. "Oh, I can imagine." Something shifted in his tone. Lighter, familiar. "You always were better at handling this stuff than Amy. She's been a little on edge." I said nothing, but I could hear it in his voice. That trace of doubt, that slight weariness. The cracks in their picture-perfect story were already showing. We talked a little longer, small talk, polite laughter. But when I hung up, a thought took root in my mind. Cold and deliberate. They still didn't realize I wasn't the same woman they'd broken. The next few days were a blur of errands and small-town gossip. Word of my return spread fast. People whispered at the grocery store, at the salon, even at church. Everyone had an opinion, but I didn't care. Every smile I gave was measured, every answer carefully crafted. I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to make memories, the kind people wouldn't forget. Amy texted me almost daily. She wanted my help with small wedding details, table settings, floral arrangements, last-minute coordination. It was almost pathetic how eager she was to have me involved. Maybe she thought if she pulled me close enough, it'd make her look innocent, so I agreed, every single time. "Oh, of course. Amy, whatever you need. I'd love to help, because sometimes revenge doesn't start with fire. Sometimes it starts with kindness." 2 days before the wedding, I met Amy at the venue for a final walkthrough. The place was breathtaking. White roses, hanging lights, a lake glittering under the late afternoon sun. Amy stood in the center of it all, giving orders like she owned the world. When she spotted me, she waved excitedly. "You made it." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. She led me around, showing me every detail, soaking in my compliments like sunlight. But underneath her enthusiasm, I noticed something else. Desperation. She needed my approval. She wanted to see admiration in my eyes. When we stopped by the reception hall, she turned to me suddenly. "You don't still hate me, right?" I blinked, surprised by the bluntness. "Hate you?" I said quietly. "No, Amy, I don't hate you. And technically it wasn't a lie. Hate is loud, chaotic. What I felt was quieter, like the slow tightening of a noose. She smiled, visibly relieved. Good, I never meant for that day to go so wrong. I know, I said, but sometimes we have to live with the consequences of our choices. Her smile faltered for just a second. I noticed. Then she clapped her hands together. Anyway, rehearsal dinner tomorrow. You'll come, right? Wouldn't dream of missing it. That night I took a walk by the lake behind my hotel. The air was cool, crisp, smelling faintly of pine and wet earth. Fireflies hovered above the water like tiny, flickering secrets. I thought about the past, the girl I used to be, soft and naive, desperate to be loved. The one who thought friendship meant loyalty and forgiveness meant peace. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone quieter, sharper. Someone who understood that people, like Amy, never apologize because they're sorry. They apologize because they need to fix their image. She'd used me once to make herself look good, and now she was doing it. Again, the difference? This time, I was the one writing the story. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be a quiet evening. White tablecloths, polite laughter, clinking glasses. But even before I walked through the door, I could feel it, that nervous electricity that comes when people know a ghost is about to join the room. Because that's what I'd become in this town. An echo from a story everyone still whispered about. The entrance, this restaurant was one of those new rustic chic places, all reclaimed wood and Edison bulbs. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. The entire table turned when I entered, forks frozen halfway to mouths. Amy stood at the far end, wearing a pale pink dress that looked like it belonged in a bridal magazine. Daniel sat beside her, fidgeting with the stem of his wine glass. Look who finally made it. Amy's voice was too bright, the kind of cheerfulness that comes from panic. I smiled and crossed the room. Sorry, traffic. You know how it is. Every eye followed me as Amy introduced me to people who already knew exactly who I was. I could almost hear their thoughts. That's her, the first bride. Amy pulled out the empty chair beside her. Sit next to me. Of course she did. She wanted everyone to see how gracious she was. The benevolent bride welcoming her ex-best friend. I took the seat and let her perform. The dinner. The waiter poured wine, and conversation started again, though stilted. Amy talked about the honeymoon. Daniel mentioned work. A bridesmaid asked me about my life in the city. It's good, I said simply. Quiet, predictable. Amy leaned in. You always hated predictable. Her tone was teasing, but her eyes searched mine for weakness. People change, I said. Daniel chuckled softly. She has a point, Amy. I caught the faintest flicker of irritation cross Amy's face. It was gone in an instant, but I'd seen it. Perfect. The first fractious dessert arrived. I leaned toward Daniel, lowering my voice just enough for Amy to hear. So, do you still have that old habit of running your hands through your hair when you're nervous? He laughed. Still do. He did it right then without realizing. Amy's smile tightened. He does that all the time lately, she said. Stressful planning, I offered. Or maybe he's worried about something else, she said lightly. But her tone had an edge. I raised my glass. To weddings, I said. May they always go exactly as planned. Daniel's hand froze halfway to his drink. Amy blinked, then forced a laugh. The table laughed with her. But no one missed the tension curling around her shoulders. Old friends, old memories, after dinner, people drifted to the bar area. Amy busied herself thanking guests. I found Daniel standing alone near the patio doors. Didn't think I'd see you again, he said. Same, I replied. He exhaled. Amy's been on edge. She thinks people still talk about, they probably do. He looked guilty. She says she wants to make things right. Does she? I asked, watching Amy through the glass. She was laughing too loudly at something a groomsman said. He shrugged. She's trying. Trying to fix her image, I thought. Daniel, I said quietly, do you ever wonder why she told you to smash that cake? He frowned. You really think she did? I smiled faintly. She told you, didn't she? His mouth opened, then closed. Confusion flickered in his eyes. "I don't know," he muttered. "Maybe I misunderstood." Maybe. He stared at me for a moment longer, then walked away, his shoulders tense, his thoughts newly unsettled. The speech later, Amy clinked her glass for attention. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she began, beaming at the crowd. "And especially," she looked straight at me, "my dear friend, for showing that true forgiveness exists." Everyone applauded. I smiled back sweetly. When the noise died, I rose to my feet. "Since we're thanking people," I said, "I'd like to say something too." Amy's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't planned for this. "I just want to say how proud I am of Amy," I began. "She's always been persuasive, a natural leader, someone who knows exactly how to get people to do what she wants." A ripple of laughter passed through the room. Amy laughed too, but it sounded strained. "And Daniel," I continued, turning to him, "you've always trusted her instincts completely. That's such a beautiful foundation for marriage." Daniel looked puzzled. Amy's fingers tightened around her glass. I smiled warmly. "Here's to trust." We clinked glasses. Amy's hand shook. The aftermath, the evening wound down soon after. I could feel the glances, the guests sensing something beneath the surface they couldn't quite name. Outside, as I waited for my ride, Amy appeared beside me, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. "What was that?" she hissed. "What was what?" "That little speech of yours," I shrugged. "Just being supportive. You were mocking me. Now why would I do that?" Her jaw clenched. "You think you can come back here and make me look bad?" "Amy," I said softly, stepping closer. "You're doing that all by yourself." She flinched, then she forced a smile. "You're not ruining this for me." I wouldn't dream of it. The seat back in my hotel room, I opened my laptop and pulled up the town's social media page. Photos from the dinner were already popping up. Amy posing, Daniel laughing, me smiling in the background. I posted a single comment beneath one picture. Some things never change, but some people do. That was all. No accusation, no names, just enough for people to start wondering. Within an hour, the photo had twice as many comments, questions, speculation. By morning, everyone in town would be whispering again, not about my wedding, but hers, and that I thought was only the beginning, closing scene lying in bed. I replayed the dinner in my head, the nervous glance between Amy and Daniel, the stiffness in their smiles, the tiny cracks I'd widened with nothing more than a few carefully chosen words. People think revenge is an explosion, but it isn't. It's erosion. You don't destroy the mountain. You let it crumble grain by grain until it collapses under its own weight. Tomorrow was the wedding. All I had to do was watch, and maybe, just maybe, whisper one last truth at the perfect moment. The morning of the wedding dawned in a pale wash of gold. The town's small church steeple gleamed, and from her hotel balcony the narrator could already hear the bustle of florists and catering vans. Every sound felt like the ticking of a clock she had wound herself. For months she had rehearsed this moment, not to break laws or spill blood, but to expose the people who had broken trust and pretended it was love. Amy and Daniel had built their future on a lie. All she had to do was show everyone the cracks. She dressed with the precision of a soldier. Her gown wasn't white this time, but charcoal silk that caught light like water. Power, not purity. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't see the trembling bride who'd been humiliated with a cake smash. She saw someone who had survived it. Arrival, the church was filled with the perfume of lilies and the murmur of polite gossip. Old friends glanced at her in surprise. Some whispered that it was gracious of her to come. She smiled, every expression measured. Amy floated down the aisle, glowing under the veil. Daniel waited at the altar, all charm and nerves. The narrator watched him flinch when his eyes met hers. Just for a second, his jaw locked. A small, perfect crack. When the minister asked if anyone objected, silence rippled through the room. For a heartbeat she considered speaking, but silence was stronger. Let them tie the knot themselves. Rope can hold or hang. The reception, the hall glittered with crystal and laughter. Speeches began. the father of the bride, a college friend, then Daniel's best man. The narrator's turn came unexpectedly when Amy, in a burst of performative grace, lifted her microphone. "Everyone, I want to thank someone special," Amy said, eyes shining. "It means the world that she's here tonight after everything. Forgiveness is such a beautiful thing." All faces turned. The narrator rose slowly. "You're right," she said, taking the mic. "Forgiveness is beautiful, but it's also honest. Should we tell them what really happened?" The air thinned. Amy laughed nervously. "Oh, come on, let's not." But the narrator continued, voice calm. 2 years ago, Amy convinced Daniel to pull a prank at my wedding. She told him I'd love it. He did it. I didn't. It ended my marriage. A week later, they started dating. Gasps. Murmurs. Daniel's mother dropped her fork. She placed the mic back on the table. "I've forgiven you both for what you did to me," she said softly. "But I won't forgive you for lying about it to everyone else." Then she stepped away, leaving the microphone live. Collapse what followed was chaos. Amy trying to salvage her speech. Daniel muttering that it wasn't true. Guests trading shocked looks. Within minutes, whispers turned to argument. The band faltered. The narrator stood near the doors, watching it unfold like theater. She didn't shout or gloat. She simply let truth do the work. Her parents joined her quietly. Her mother's hand brushed hers. "You okay?" "Yes," she said. Finally. Aftermath by evening, the town was buzzing. Photos of the confrontation hit social media before dessert was served. The next morning, the gossip columns had already written the headline, "Bride's Past Haunts Her Big Day." Amy's catering sponsor pulled out. Daniel's law firm put him on leave. None of it required sabotage, just honesty, delivered at the right time. The narrator left town before noon. She didn't look back at the church or the hotel. She had no reason to. Epilogue. Weeks later, a small envelope arrived at her apartment. Inside was a thank you card. No signature. Just a line in delicate handwriting. "Maybe we deserved it." She smiled, folded it once and dropped it into a drawer. Her mother's voice echoed in memory. "Don't let this stop you from believing in happy endings." She still believed in them, just not the kind that come wrapped in lace and vows. Some endings are quieter, colder but infinitely more satisfying, and that was hers.